This happened back in 2017. I want to start off by saying that I'm very well off in my life, and I live in a very nice house and own lots of very expensive cars and other stuff. I used to be very active on social media, including YouTube, and I posted a lot of photos and videos of things, showing them off. I never really bragged about anything. I'm not a snob, but I did show off a lot of my very expensive cars. One thing any YouTuber can tell you is that you tend to attract lots of different types of people. Trolls, Karens, stalkers, and some people that have really bad intentions. I'll admit, at the time, I wasn't too careful about some of the things that I posted, and that's likely what caused this to happen. At the time this happened, I lived in an older single-story house surrounded by woods on two sides. Anyway, it was late one evening around 11 p.m., and I was sitting in my living room watching TV. All of a sudden, I heard a loud bang, and I looked over to see the wooden back door by the kitchen getting kicked in and literally falling off its hinges, and then 4 masked men with guns drawn walking over to me. I was frozen with fear.
"Give us all the keys to your cars,"
one of them demanded. I didn't need to be told twice. I walked with them to the bedroom where I kept my safe and unlocked it and gave them the keys, feeling utterly defenseless at the time. After I did, I felt a sharp pain on the back of my head. The next thing I remember was waking up and then seeing blood on my carpet. I looked at the clock and it was now 4 a.m. I picked up the phone on my end table and called 911. The sheriff and ambulance took about 35 minutes to arrive because I was so far away from them. While I was in the ambulance getting treated, I had made a report with the sheriff. Strangely, only 2 of my cars had been taken, and they weren't even the most expensive ones. It really made no sense at all. The sheriff said that they might come back some other time, so they would have a deputy watch my house while I was in the hospital. I ended up spending a full day in the hospital with a concussion. One of the men had hit me in the back of the head with their gun, it seems. Later that week, I had a whole new security system installed in my house and a security gate put at the end of my driveway. After that, I was a lot more careful about what I posted online. And a couple of years later, I pretty much stopped using social media completely for many other various reasons. I've also since moved from that house. So for any social media influencers out there, just be careful of what you post online. Things travel like wildfire, and you never know who's watching. This happened several years ago. I was home alone one evening when I had heard a knock at the back door. This confused me as no one ever used that door. My husband and I lived in a 4-plex at the time, and all of the units had a back door at the top of a narrow staircase. These doors were a little inconvenient to access, as you'd have to go around the building and up to the narrow stairs as opposed to the wider main entrance at the front. It didn't make sense to use the back entrance, and I couldn't think of anyone who would go to that door to visit. As I approached the back door, I saw 2 tall men in the window standing at the door. A chill went down my spine. I didn't feel safe opening the door, so I called out, "Hello?" One of the men tapped on the window.
"Yes, hello. May we come in? We're with Bresnan."
At the time, my husband and I had Bresnan for cable, but we didn't have any issues with it. I replied, "We're not having any issues with Bresnan. Is there a problem?"
"Ma'am,"
the man said.
"Can we come in? We're servicing the area, and it's really important that we look at your cable."
I shook my head. We're not having any issues," I repeated. "So yeah, there's no need to stop by."
"Ma'am, we're visiting every resident in the area. Let us in so we can do our job,"
the man said. I noticed the man grab the doorknob to try and open the locked door. I slowly grabbed a knife from our knife block and held it at my chest. "We're not having any issues," I repeated, trying not to convey the shakiness of my voice. "So you don't need to be here." The 2 figures appeared to shuffle and then straighten.
Ma'am, let us in. We're on a deadline and we need to do our job.
The man once again said. I glanced at the clock, gauging when my husband would arrive home from work. I gripped the knife tighter.
Ma'am? Ma'am?
I saw him try the doorknob again. I closed my eyes and felt overwhelming gratitude for always locking my doors. Just then, a thought came to the forefront of my mind. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Could I please get your names and badge numbers? I can give your supervisor a call to let them know our cable is fine. I heard another shuffle, and then one of the men replied,
No need to, ma'am. We're sorry we wasted your time.
With that, both of the men exited the staircase and then disappeared into the night. Shaken up, I held the knife tightly and tried to get my bearings. I remember making a mental note to call the cable company or the police, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold my phone. With the knife still grasped to my chest and the phone falling out of my other hand, I sank to the floor and cried. When my husband returned home, I told him what had happened. I was still very shaken up and had started crying again after he came home. He immediately called the Bresnan Cable Company and spoke to a representative, who then informed us that no one from their company was out on assignment in our area. The next day, we asked our neighbors if they had a visit from the company. No one had. Back in 2019, I was talking to a guy that I had just met through an old job. Being around him was exciting, and I loved all of the adventures we would go on. What I didn't know is that he and his best friend were selling illegal substances from his best friend's house. I never heard of this occurring, nor did they ever do this around me. Fast forward to April 6, 2019. It's around 10:30 p.m. I was 18 years old at the time, and I'm a female. I was sitting upstairs in the game room with my now ex-boyfriend when two guys with blue bandanas around their faces walked inside holding handguns. They asked,
Yo, where's the stuff?
In return, my ex just laughed and asked, What stuff? There was an empty shotgun sitting beside one of the two men, and one of them turned around and grabbed it, hitting my ex square in the face. Afterwards, they forced us to go downstairs and lay on our stomachs. I had a guy on me with a knee on my back, and one right below my butt tapping the gun to my head the entire time as they searched the home. They took my phone along with other items throughout the house. They did leave for about 5 minutes before we heard the doors being busted down again and the windows breaking. They came back for round 2. We all fell back to the ground as one of the men stepped on my ex's face where he had been hit, stating that he was lucky he hadn't been shot. They then grabbed even more items and left again. I was able to find my car keys before they came back the second time and kept them with me for the second encounter. After they left, my ex and I ran to my car as quickly as possible and then left for the hospital. By the time we had left the home, we were both covered in blood, and as when laying on the ground, my ex was bleeding horribly from the shotgun wound to his face. I'll never forget that night. The feeling of somebody else having your life in their hands selfishly, being covered in someone else's blood, and how it felt sitting alone in the hospital waiting room as I was left to soak in the thoughts of what had just occurred. I'm a 21-year-old female, and the story actually took me about 4 full days to type out. I got weird mini anxiety attacks when I tried. I'll be the first to admit that I've had a very, that can't happen to me, complex, and that's kind of what occurred in this story. I'm a university student, and I live in a rental house with 5 other people. It's far from ideal, but in this housing outcry that we're living in, it takes that sting off of us having to pay a bunch of money a month to exist in a box. This has relevance, I swear. I got extremely lucky last weekend when the 5 of the roommates I had were all out for the weekend. This has never happened, so I was really ecstatic to have the house to myself. I did the whole 21-year-old girl home alone stuff that you can think of. Watching movies with the volume loud, taking long-ass showers, walking around the house without a bra. You get the point. It was around 10 p.m. I had finished some homework and was relaxing with a glass of wine and watching some streaming services. It sounded briefly like there was something moving on the porch. We've had a fox in our yard before, and the thing used to make a lot of noise on our porch, so I assumed that to be the case. After hearing some fumbling the second time, I went over to check through the window. There was nothing there. As I'm turning to head back to the living room, a piece of cement flies through our kitchen window. I didn't know it was cement at the time, but that's not important. I think I peed myself a little bit when it happened, but I definitely screamed like a little girl. My moronic ass started unlocking the door to go outside, but common sense seized control of me again, and I locked the door back immediately. I also ran to the back door just to make sure it was still locked, even though it's glass and wouldn't even make a difference. Oddly enough, at this time my grandma's words came right into my head about something her own mother had told her. If someone tries breaking into your house, turn the lights off. You know the inside of your house better than they do. I shut the lights off in the living room and managed to turn the TV off, which was hard because my hands were shaking. My dad used to give me and my siblings advice on protection measures, which were not resonating at this time. I secured myself in my upstairs bedroom, roast me if you want, and I turned all the lights out in the house as I passed them. While walking up the stairs, I could hear the doorknob shaking furiously from the front door. I don't know if there was more than one person or if they realized they couldn't jump the fence to get into the backyard. While calling for emergency services on speaker, I secured my hunting knife to the end of my hockey stick with hot pink duct tape. I know, that's probably one of the most Canadian things I could say. If I was going to have to use it, at least I would look fabulous. I stayed in the dark holding my makeshift spear for what was probably about 15 minutes. I'm really glad that I wasn't being murdered in that amount of time. The operator then told me that the police were coming, which they eventually did. They took a very unsettling amount of time. The only reason I left the bedroom in the first place was because I heard knocking on the door downstairs and the police lights were flashing through the window. Otherwise, someone would have had to come in and physically pull me out of that room. A statement was given, but that's all they did. Literally all they did. Nothing else. Literally just that. A very nice female officer stayed with me in the house and helped me clean up the glass until my brother showed up to bring me to his place for the rest of the weekend, which I was very grateful for. So shout out to the officer cutie with the tattoos. I made an appointment with the doctor to get out on anxiety medicine, as well as medicine for nightmares. I know that I wasn't in any physical danger, but I've had some very charming dreams about similar scenarios, and I was just finding it easier to stay awake. Maybe that's juvenile of me, but I'm human. Meds are working fine, and I'm back at my house with wall-to-wall people again. And honestly, I don't hate that so much anymore. Years ago, I was 9 years old, and I was home alone with my 12-year-old brother. We were supposed to go at my aunt's house to have lunch and wait for my mother there. We always did that because we were too young to stay home alone, according to my mom. We got up at 10:30 a.m., I took a shower, and then my brother. After that, we were both in the bathroom just brushing our teeth and finishing up, when we heard someone knocking on our door. Since every time someone knocked on our door, they turned out to be a salesman or Jehovah's Witness, we kind of just waited for them to go away. After a couple of minutes, I went to see if they were still outside through the window, but no one was there. What a relief. We continued getting ready when we saw a shadow go by through the bathroom window, which was kind of like a small square made with that kind of glass that makes everything behind it really blurry. We waited and watched just in case it was a bird flying by. When a hand hit it clear as day, we got scared and we didn't know what to do. My brother had his cell phone, so he immediately called the police. While it was ringing, we had heard a loud bang at the door. Someone was brute forcing it. I don't know if they were kicking it or ramming it or what. but it was one of the most frightening things I've ever heard. My brother told me to lock the bathroom door, and so I did. It took 5 bangs until the perpetrator could finally bash open the door. Then the police answered. I remember the exact thing that my brother said. He was whispering. His voice could barely be heard.
"Hello, there's someone in our house. I think they're stealing."
Then a pause.
"We're at our house."
And he proceeded to give our address. Then another pause.
"I'm with my little brother locked in our bathroom. Please hurry."
While all that was being said, I was sitting against the wall hugging my knees. It was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences ever. I could hear the man going through all of our stuff, emptying stands, going up and down the stairs, opening cabinets. He even broke a few cups and plates. I don't know why. I then heard the sound my cell phone makes when it turns off, and I remembered that I left it on the kitchen table. I felt so stupid for leaving it there. Things continued for a couple of minutes when we heard him trying to open the door to the bathroom. My brother got a hold of a big metal rod that we had laying around there. He started kicking the door.
"Who the hell's in there?"
The man screamed. We said nothing in return. Then he kicked again and again. I felt like I was about to have an anxiety attack. My chest started to ache, and I had chills and was really hot. I tried to remain calm, but it was just way too much. After that, he stopped. We heard the door opening, and then silence. We waited for almost 10 minutes before going out of the bathroom. The living room was a total mess. Lots of papers and books all over the floor. The cabinets were wide open, cups and plates all over the floor as well. In our mother's bedroom, the nightstand and the closet were fully open, and everything inside of them was all over the place. Upstairs in our room, it was the same thing. In just about 5 minutes, the man was able to go through everything we had and left a total mess. After that, my brother called my mom, and she ordered us to go to my aunt's house ASAP, so we did. When we got there, I was a little more relaxed. My aunt was waiting for us with ice cream, probably because my mom told her everything that happened, and she wanted to calm us down a bit. We went back home at about 5 p.m. My mom told her boss that she had a home emergency, so she left work early. She tidied up the house, cleaned up, and left everything the way it was before so we could be relaxed. I really appreciated her and my aunt's efforts to calm us down and do everything they could so that we didn't have to think about it. According to my mom, the police got home after she arrived at 3 p.m., 4 hours after the incident. She explained everything that happened, but because of lack of evidence, nothing could be done. The man was never caught, and honestly, I don't think they even tried to search for him. The next few days, my mom was home with us. I now tell the story as a funny anecdote. Luckily, no one was hurt, and he only took useless stuff. But at the time, I was really scared. To a 9-year-old child, an experience like that can have serious repercussions. I'm really lucky that it never came to that, and that I got over it after a couple of weeks. I do want to mention a few more details before I end this. You may be wondering why it took 4 hours for the police to get there. My house is located on the far side of the city, but most importantly, the police in my country just suck. If you ask around, chances are plenty of people that have called the police had to wait for hours. Back then, news about how long it took for them to respond were common. In fact, one of the reasons for the 2019 Chilean protests was the dislike for the police labor. Fortunately, things are now getting better and trust for the police, while still fragile, is improving. So yeah, that's my story.